Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Let's go!
Hey everyone. Before I jump into today's episode, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for sticking with me. I know it's been a minute and the podcast has been on a bit of a hiatus for the past month or so, but life sure threw me a few curveballs, including an illness that took me out for a bit, but also some big crazy moments. One of my daughters, she just graduated from university with a bachelor's in motion picture arts degree, and I couldn't be more proud. And my other daughter just graduated from high school, and she is ready to take over the world. So it's been a time of celebration, reflection, and yes, total chaos. I truly appreciate all the messages, support, and patience from the amazing Life of Phys community. Thank you all for being here. It truly means the world to me. Now let's get back to the real reason you're here. Today's guest. Today on the Life of Phys, we're sitting down with the man behind some of the most iconic photos in modern American history. Pete Souza isn't just a photographer. He's a photographer who had a front row seat to the presidencies of both Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama. As chief official White House photographer, Pete captured everything from high-stakes meetings in the Situation Room to candid moments in the Oval Office. Moments that told the world more than words ever could. Before the White House, Pete was hustling as a staff photographer for the Chicago Tribune, shooting for National Geographic and chasing stories around the globe. He has since become a best-selling author with Obama, An Intimate Portrait, and Shade, A Tale of Two Presidents. And he is also a powerful voice on leadership, image, and truth in the age of media. He is also inducted into the International Photography Hall of Fame and taught visual communications at Ohio University. If you've ever seen a photo that gave you chills, chances are Pete Souza took it. Now let's get to the show.
My name's Pete Souza. I guess I'm a retired photographer, although I still photograph every week. And have had a long career as both a photojournalist and an official White House photographer.
So how did you find photography, Pete? How did that become a part of your life? How did you know that is something you wanted to pursue?
I'd gone to Boston University to their journalism school, their communication school, with the hopes of becoming a sports writer. And in my junior year, I took a photography class. And I think when I made the first print in the darkroom, I was hooked. And I knew somehow that was what I wanted to do. I had it took me 5 years probably to get to be any good. And, after graduating from BU, I kind of abandoned photography for a year. So it was a struggle to start out, but I knew it was kind of the only thing that, that really interested me to the point that I had to figure out a way to, make that my life's mission was to make a living somehow as a photographer. Although I have to say that, in retrospect, there was something happened when I was 8 years old that probably stuck in the back of my mind, and that was right after Kennedy was assassinated. I was watching the TV in my parents' house, little black and white TV. A couple of days later, watching live on TV as Lee Harvey Oswald was getting booked at the Dallas jail, and I'm watching this happen live. And there's a big commotion, and the reporter says, Oswald's been shot. He's been shot. And I was like watching it live, and I didn't you couldn't really see what had happened. It was just kind of a jumble. And there wasn't instant replay back then, so that you didn't get to, see it in slow motion or anything. And then the next day in the newspaper was Bob Jackson's famous picture of Ruby shooting Oswald. And it was like, that floored me that, here I had been watching this whole thing unfold live on TV, and I couldn't really see what had happened. And yet here was this one still picture that was so precise and perfect, and it showed, what had just happened in such a profound way that I think that probably stuck in the back of my head. The power of a still photograph.
Especially when that moment, I mean, back then, like you said, you don't really see what's going on. I remember watching those, the documentaries on the JFK assassination with my dad. And it was just, you could see reporters from their vantage point, from the video vantage point, but you never really could see what happened. I've actually never seen the photo. So I'm going to have to look that one up.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible photo. I did get a hold of the YouTube. I did get a hold of the video that I had seen, and it's kind of like how I remember it, where you can't really tell what's going on, and you hear the reporter saying, Oswald's been shot. Oswald.
So after your hiatus, like taking that time away after BU, what was the next step? How did you find your way back to photography and start your career? Because I know you've done a ton of stuff. I mean, you were in Afghanistan after 9/11. Like, you've done your body of work is amazing. So how did you find yourself back, and where was your start? How did you get your start looking into moving forward? Did you want to be a photojournalist? Was that kind of the goal at this point?
Yeah, I mean, when I left BU, I applied for jobs at newspapers in Massachusetts. I didn't have that great of a portfolio, and nobody hired me. And so I went to work for my uncle's business for a year. And, I did a few like kind of assignments for the local paper in New Bedford, Mass. But nothing, and they wouldn't hire me full time. And so it never really kind of clicked, pun intended, I guess. And so I started thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll just go to graduate school, and started looking around, for possibilities. Saw an ad in Editor and Publisher magazine, which was kind of a thing back then because they had advertisements in the back. And I saw a little ad for a graduate photo teaching assistant at Kansas State University. And so I applied for that, did an interview over the phone. They hired me, or offered me the job, which would, basically enable me to go to graduate school for free if I would teach this basic photography class in the agricultural journalism program. There wasn't really a photojournalism program. So, got my car, drove out to Kansas, and turns out Kansas State University had a great college newspaper, 5 days a week. They had a photo staff, even though they had no photojournalism program. Had a great reputation. And so I started, in addition to being a grad student and teaching basic photo class, I joined the staff of this college newspaper. And that's kind of when it all, came together. After probably about 6 months, I sort of got back on a roll. I mean, the kind of photography that I do involves, capturing the moment. This is in the analog days of having to follow focus, manual focus. And so I was very rusty. it's not like it's not like riding a bike, photography, at least the kind of photography I do. You've got to be doing it every day. And so it took me maybe, a few months to get back in the swing of things. And, in many ways, I've been going ever since. But I think that was when everything came together, working for this college newspaper for a couple of years.
And then did it transition from there? Is that where you transitioned into working for Reagan or for working for the White House? I'm not sure which one. Did you actually work directly for Reagan, or were you just part of the White House crew of photographers?
Well, first, I worked for 3 daily newspapers.
Okay.
Over the course of what was it? I guess 4 or 5 years. 2 small papers in Kansas, and then the Chicago Sun-Times. And then I got a call from the White House photo editor, who was somebody that I kind of knew professionally. She had been the director of photography at the Kansas City Star. I had actually applied for a job with her when she was in that job, and she didn't hire me, but she kind of kept track of my career. And then she became the White House photo editor. And Michael Evans was Reagan's chief photographer. This would have been in the spring of 1983. So 2 years into Reagan's first term. So she urged me to apply for this job. They had an opening on the staff working under Michael. It was a staff of, I think, 3 other photographers. And then, Michael hired me. And then after Reagan left, after Reagan's first term, Michael Evans left the White House, and they didn't really replace him. So that opened up a lot more access for me and my other 3 colleagues during Reagan's second term. That was that. I had not. It was, so I went from a daily newspaper to, all of a sudden I'm inside the Oval Office every day, which is kind of a heady experience for somebody still in their 20s.
I can only imagine. Now, I know when I watched the documentary and I was really learning about how open access you had in the Obama administration, was it similar in the Reagan administration, or was it much more guarded? Because that access that they show and that you had and the images you captured, that sets such a tone. It shows like real life Barack Obama, it shows a real life person. It's not just photos of the president doing president things. It was everything. I think over time my access to Reagan got better. I gently pushed for more access. It wasn't so much him as it was some of the people around him were sort of more protective of Reagan, I think. But I established a good rapport with a lot of people, and I think over time the access got better. In retrospect, I think it's more difficult when you've got 3 or 4 photographers kind of rotating throughout the day to maintain the level of access that you need, because it's hard to, if there's some secret mission going on, you can't really trust 4 different photographers, to what's going on. So that, that played out later when I joined Obama on how I was going to approach the access for him.
but like even the biggest political scandal during Reagan was Iran-Contra, and the the day that everything came to a head, I made sure I stayed in the room and documented everything that happened for history. I mean, we didn't make any of the photos public at the time, but for history, I thought it was important, to capture those moments. And I mean, part of it too was, Reagan was much more formal, um, and his and was conservative. Not, I don't mean politically, which he was, but I mean just in the way that he interacted with other people. It was just kind of, it was just he's a different human being than Barack Obama.
And then you were with Reagan until the end of his second term, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then you left White House and you went on to do other things, I'm assuming, in the photojournalism space. How did you get brought back into Obama's photo circle? Like, how did that happen?
Life works in funny ways. So I had, after I left the White House with Reagan, I freelanced for 9 years. And then I was asked to become the Washington-based photographer for the Chicago Tribune. And I didn't really want to cover politics because I had had access during Reagan, and I didn't want to be one of the, group of 10 photographers or whatever that gets to cover, a minute or 2 minutes for a photo op. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do more serious things. So I did a lot of national and international stories for the Tribune. They had correspondents all over the country and all over the world. So I covered stories in China, Papua New Guinea, Turkey, Kosovo, Afghanistan after the war. Actually, Afghanistan during the war, and then in 2004, I'm working for the Tribune, and this guy named Barack Obama gets elected to the Senate. And there's a lot of hype about him coming in, and so a reporter and I, Jeff Zeleny, who's now at CNN, he and I approached the Obama team and said, "Hey, we'd like to document Obama's first year in the Senate, very extensively, not for daily consumption, but we would do, 3 major stories throughout the year." And so they let us do it. They gave me access that they didn't give anybody else. And when you're working in close proximity to somebody like that, you develop a professional relationship with them. I ended up traveling to 5 countries with Obama as senator while he was senator, including Ukraine and Russia, Azerbaijan, South Africa, Kenya. Maybe it was more than 5. And subsequently he decides to run for president a couple years later. I covered the start of the campaign, and then I quit the Tribune. And then I quit the Tribune because they had been bought by a real estate magnate, and I could see what was happening to the Tribune, and I just didn't want to be any part of it. So I took a teaching job at Ohio University right in the middle of Obama's campaign for president. And I knew that I was, giving away this opportunity to continue photographing his campaign for the Tribune, but I just couldn't stomach working for that newspaper anymore. But I kept in touch with him. Anytime he was in Ohio, I would go cover. That was back when Ohio was still in play for the Democrats. So he was occasionally in Ohio. I'd go photograph as a freelancer. I went to the convention. I photographed at the convention. I was there election night. And about a week after the election, I figured, maybe I'd have a shot at being his photographer in the White House. And I remember I sent Robert Gibbs, who was his closest aide, an email. And somewhere I've got a copy of the email. But it was all I said was, I'd be interested. Like I didn't even go into any depth because, they knew me, they knew my work, they knew what kind of person I was. I didn't need to present a portfolio. It was just I wanted to put my name on their radar. And that was it. I didn't, there wasn't any formal application. I just said I'm interested. And then a couple of weeks before the inauguration, Gibbs called me on behalf of the president-elect and offered me the job. So that's how that all happened.
It's amazing the power of just being willing to reach out. I know you knew them, but still, you reach out. You said, "Hey, I'm interested," and great things can happen if you're not afraid to take that step.
Yeah, the funny thing about Gibbs is he was notorious for not returning emails or phone calls. Just because I think he was a little disorganized and had, obviously a lot on his plate. But I knew to be persistent, and yet this was one email that he responded to right away. So I felt, okay, he's not blowing me off. I think he said something like "good to know" or whatever. That's it. It was the emails back and forth were very short. I'm interested. His response was something like "good to know." That was it.
Wow. And it led to 8 years, right? 8 years with Obama. With the access.
It led to 8 years, and it was kind of funny. What usually happens after a first term, is a lot of people leave. The tradition is that every cabinet secretary submits their resignation, and he either tears it up, or and asks people to stay on, or he hires new cabinet secretaries. I mean, most people 4 years is just takes so much out of them that somebody else will serve in that position. And I remember I remember people on my staff were saying well, so what's the plan? Or can I stay on a second term? And I go, look, I was like, I haven't even talked to him about whether he wants me to stay on. I got to have that conversation with him. I never had that conversation with him. I think he just assumed, well, why are you going to, why would you leave? So I actually literally never had a conversation with him about whether he wanted me to stay on for the second term. It just we just got started and kept going.
So with that access that you had to him, I mean, you obviously develop a friendship over time. You previously had already developed that with your work on when he was a senator. It's just watching the documentary, and I've showed it to my wife, I've showed it to my kids, because there's so much fun and humor during some of the toughest times. And you see the images you captured showed him as a human being, as a father, as somebody who's going through all of these emotions for the people that he he's visiting and seeing in probably the hardest times of their lives. But I love that one talk you talk about when he blocked the basketball shot. And that was like how he came over and he's just like, hey, did you get that? Like that's just such a normal, I guess when people think of the president, you put him on kind of a pedestal. Like he's not doing normal things like everybody else. Was he like that often? Like, did you get to see those kind of interactions all the time?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I knew what my role was. My role was to be, an observer. I was there to document visually what was taking place. My job was not to be a participant. There are occasions like that, where I became a participant, but I wouldn't be in a meeting and express my point of view or something like that. I mean, I think probably there were more interactions like that with him when it was, on his vacations or private situations with his family, where I might interact with him a little more than I would on. I mean, there were some days where I wouldn't talk to him at all. I'd be with him all day long, because he had a lot of shit going on, and I didn't want to be that guy that would just say something inappropriate or get in his headspace. That was something that I was very conscious of, and I just wouldn't do. And yet there were also times when if he's got the president doesn't get sick days, right? And I knew when he was not feeling well, and I would check on him, say, "You doing okay? Might have like a sinus infection or something like that." And I felt comfortable saying that if the circumstance felt right. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
I think it answered it perfectly. I just having that access and just seeing him act like, I don't know, it sounds weird, but like a normal person, not really that you're in his space, but that you just got to see him as him and not, just being the president and serious, taking care of business all the time. After the Obama run, you put out your book, Shade. How fun was that to do?
Well, there was a step before that, in that I wanted to put out the definitive photography book on his 8 years. And that's what I worked on throughout 2017. And it was funny because I had I always thought that I had two jobs that year. One was trying to put together this great photography book, straight photography book of his 8 years. But I was also started throwing shade on my Instagram. And it was two completely different things. One was almost a photojournalist. I mean, I wasn't technically a photojournalist during during Obama, but that's the way I looked at what I was doing is documenting history. So I was trying to put this substantive photography book together of his 8 years through my eyes. But on the side, I was doing this shade stuff, on Instagram. And it wasn't until the following year that that I started thinking about, well, maybe shade is also a book, different kind of book. And I think that came out in I don't even remember when that came out, 2019, maybe.
I just found it your points, you're very clear on your views when you post on Instagram. And it was such a perfect book to release. I like the layout of it. I like how it is. I have it in my collection over here somewhere. But was it fun to write? I mean, like you said, you were doing the book you were working on. That was the intimate portrait of Obama, correct? Was that the one?
Yeah.
And then you go and you get to do this, and you get to talk about the things that were just crazy to listen to see on Twitter and see on the other social media. Did you get you must have got a lot of blowback from that?
Yeah, I got a lot of blowback both from Instagram and then when the book came out, some threats. A couple of the threats were directed at both me and the former president. And the ones where he would also be mentioned in an email, or on social media, I would turn those over to the Secret Service and they would, investigate. And so thus far, this go around, it's subsided quite a bit, mostly because I monitor the comments on my Instagram, and if there's I think all the trolls have gone away because I've blocked them, and so this, because I'm still kind of throwing shade this now, but I'm not getting much blowback. Although, as I said, I wrote this piece for Vanity Fair that may.
And when does that come out?
I mean, we're still editing it,
okay.
So I don't even know. Sometime in the next couple weeks, I guess. I'm not sure. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, that's. I look forward to reading it. So after 9/11, you actually you went to Afghanistan as well, correct?
I did. I happened to be in Chicago on 9/11. I lived in DC. I lived like 3 miles from the Pentagon. But I happened to be in Chicago and was supposed to actually fly home that day on September 11th. I think I had a 1 o'clock flight or something. And I ended up renting a car and driving home, and drove by the Pentagon at, I don't know what time I got home. It was like 2 in the morning or something like that. Made some pictures there. And then the next day I was at the White House. Bush had some cabinet meeting or something, photographed that. And then I went up to New York. We had 2 other photographers already in New York, and I just kind of helped them out for a couple weeks. And then sometime in October, a reporter and I flew to Tajikistan, because you could get across the border into northern Afghanistan. You couldn't get in through Pakistan, but you could get in the north. So yeah, so we were able to get into northern Afghanistan, and we took horses over the Hindu Kush Mountains, and then hooked up with the Northern Alliance, the soldiers that were fighting the Taliban. At the time, there were no U.S. troops on the ground. This is just when it was a U.S. air campaign. And so we were with the local militia, I guess, the local fighters, until Kabul fell.
So when you landed, you went over the mountains on horseback. And what was that? I don't even have a level to understand what that must have felt like to be in Afghanistan at that time, and what it took to get to where you were with the militia and with the Northern Alliance fighters and things. What kind of experience? How did that feel to be in that place at that time when this was all going on? Like, personally, how did you feel?
Well, it was, probably the riskiest thing I've ever done. The was not. I had my British Airways had lost my bag with all my winter clothes, so I ended up, with whatever whatever I could buy locally, which was not that much for winter clothes. So it was 10 or 20 degrees below freezing when we crossed that mountain on horseback. There's like 3 or 4 feet of snow, and the plan was that there was going to be a vehicle on the other side of the mountain that we had made arrangements with somehow. I don't even remember how. And the vehicle was not there. So, so it's now nighttime, and it's now probably 10 degrees. We're not dressed properly. And we fortunately had come across this Northern Alliance hut. They had like a little wood burning stove. And I remember we begged those guys if we could spend the night in that hut with them. I had a guy's feet at my face, and my feet was at somebody else's face. It was, there was a whole bunch, I don't know, maybe a dozen of us all jammed in this one space. But, we were able to spend the night at least not freezing ourselves to death, because that's what would have happened. And then the next morning, we got a vehicle and drove to outside of Kabul, which is where all the Northern Alliance guys were, and hooked up with them, as they made their kind of final push against the Taliban, backed by, we could see the B-52 American bombs being dropped, but a lot of RPGs coming at us, rocket propelled grenades, tanks were firing at us, sniper bullets, all those things. And I was not really, I wasn't wearing a flak jacket or anything like that. I was not really prepared to photograph war, and all of a sudden here I was kind of like right in the middle of it. But it was kind of over quick, really, just over a couple of days. It was over. The Taliban just surrendered, and we were kind of ahead of the Northern Alliance as they moved into Kabul. So it was, and it was actually a very rewarding experience in some ways. Like, this is back when the first, not the first digital camera, but the digital cameras were good enough that you could get a picture published in the newspaper and it would look okay. It was whatever that first Nikon was, D1 or something like that. I can't remember what it was called. And so here we are in a country with hardly any running water. Most places didn't have electricity, but with a satellite phone and a solar powered generator, I could send pictures back to Chicago instantly. It would take a while, to make that transmission, but you could do it. And so it was so my pictures were on the front page of the Tribune the next day. And I started the staff back in Chicago started sending me like emails they were getting. So people were like sending me emails of commenting on my photos, because I was kind of in a never land, not knowing what was going on, where my pictures being used. I didn't know. And I'm getting all these emails from readers about, uh, just it was kind of an incredible experience to get real time feedback like that when you're thousands of miles away, not knowing if people are seeing your pictures, and it turns out they were. So it was very rewarding while I was there, knowing that people were following what was happening in Afghanistan through my work. That was one of the more rewarding things I think I've done in my career.
I can't even fathom what it felt like with all of that stuff being shot at you, and you're still trying to capture the moments. And I think that's what's so incredible about photojournalism is there is all of this powerful work from these crazy, crazy war zones and these experiences that are shared through an image from the click of a shutter. It all draws from that click of the shutter. And the shutter to me means so much. It brings me to a very good place in my life. So do you have any advice for the people that are listening that may want to get into photojournalism or currently in photojournalism on maybe how not to give up, or things that you saw that may help them achieve that next step in their journey?
Well, I mean, I think you got to really want it. I think it's difficult to be a photojournalist today because there's so few newspaper staff jobs. So inevitably you have to be, a freelancer. And to do freelance photojournalism is really difficult. And I think not all, but most freelance photojournalists also do, other types of photography, meaning commercial, corporate, whatever, in order to pay the bills. And so I think that you've got to learn how to become a businessman or a businesswoman as well. I think that's an important part of making it work today. There's also other genres of photography. I've got a couple friends that are music photographers. That's all they do. They either hook up with one artist, David Bergman, who used to work for Sports Illustrated, now is on tour with Luke Combs, for instance. That's all he does. I mean, he does other stuff, but that's his main job. Danny Clinch just shoots music. And there's people that do fashion. There's people that do, I know one friend of mine that shoots food. Now, you wouldn't think you'd be able to make a living shooting food, but he has like contracts with, 12 restaurants or something. And, and he sort of like does their social media. And so there's many different genres of photography that you can do. I think for photojournalism, I think you just have to try to have other avenues of income besides, just doing an assignment for the New York Times or, magazines, that kind of thing. And I think also that you've got to think of trying to do projects on your own that will help fulfill you. You talk about mental health. I think if you feel like the work you're doing isn't what you really want to do, then go out and do the kind of work that you want to do, even if you're not getting paid for that work. I tried to do that when I was freelancing, is just do my own projects when I could, to fulfill my creative sense. And then, and I also did, when I was freelancing, I also did a fair amount of corporate stuff that I, to be honest, didn't like doing, but it, helped pay the bills. I think, but I also think that at least for the kind of photography that I do or that I did, it was important to photograph every day. I think you can easily get rusty with timing and anticipation and the way you're framing photos if you're not out there thinking and doing it every day. I especially say that to young photographers that are just starting out in college. And I would there's a book out by this guy named David Hobby. I have it over here somewhere, but I forget the name of it. Maybe I'll find it and tell you the name later. It's a remarkable book. I mean, he's kind of like now he does. He had this website 20 years ago called The Strobist, which got a lot of attention. And now he kind of does these workshops in Vietnam. But it's a very interesting book for people that want to learn how to go out and do street photography or how to connect with people that you don't even know. And he also has a chapter on, he calls it, looking through the viewfinder, he calls it the box, where you're trying to think about every aspect of what you're going to put inside that box before you click the shutter. In other words, it's talking about framing and composition and how all the elements in that viewfinder are important to, what to include, what not to include. So I recommended this book to this one college student that I sort of keep in touch with. I had met her at a workshop. And every once in a while she'll, send me some photos that she's done and I critique them. And I recommended this book to her and she thought it was really, really helpful. So I would recommend this book for, especially for people just starting out that want to do this photojournalism thing.
Yeah, I would love to get the title from you and share that.
Hang on a second. Let's see. Hang on. I'm going to take this off for a minute. I can't remember where I put the damn thing. Sorry, I can't remember where I put it, but it's around here somewhere. My office is a mess right now. But
yeah, that seems to be the norm. I work a 9 to 5. I do this plus trying to do photography projects and I have 6 kids and 2 grandkids. So I'm always
That's
moving.
a lot, man.
Yeah. And I started really getting into photography in my late 40s. So, I turned 50 this year and I keep just pushing. I'm trying to push myself with the show and with my involvement in my local community of photography and showing my kids, like, it doesn't matter how old you are, just jump. Like, if you believe in something, just go for it. And, I try to lead by that example. I'm so grateful for your time today, Pete. I usually do about an hour, so it works good for everybody and people listen to the whole thing. Just again, thank you for the work you put out. Thank you for, inspiring thousands of people around the world to, keep putting out their images and doing what they do. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Well, I'm fairly active still on Instagram, which is just at Pete Souza. I quit Twitter. I don't really. I have a Facebook account, but I'm never on Facebook. I don't think I've posted. I may have posted once, maybe in 5 years. So Instagram is kind of the only social media thing that I do. And I do have a website, petesouza.com, but to be honest with you, I have not updated it in probably since I left the White House. It's just, eventually, I'm going to perfect that to the point where, it will exist even after I'm gone. But right now it's just there's not much there. It doesn't change at all. So, I mean, I guess Instagram is the place.
Perfect. What's your guilty pleasure photography wise? Do you like to go out and do landscape to relax, or do you enjoy just keep still capturing people in their natural environment?
So I mean, I do. We've got a couple of music bands that I'm friends with that I photograph. And we have a cabin in Michigan, and I've been photographing, I guess what you would call it nature, and landscapes up there, when I go up there all the time. And I've got two young granddaughters, and kind of documenting their lives as well.
Fantastic. Well, Pete, thank you so much for
thanks
for today. Again, I'm a big fan of the work, and I look forward to watching what you have coming out. I look forward to reading the new article that you're going to be releasing. And you know what? I just hope you have a great afternoon, and you just enjoy the weather. I don't know if it's nice there or not, but
it is nice. Like it's in the 70s today, so I'm like anxious to go out for a nice walk.
Nice. Yeah, I don't have rain today, and I'm on the complete opposite coast. So
where are you, on the West Coast? Or?
Yeah, I'm based just outside of Vancouver, Canada.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's supposed to be a good city, I hear.
Yeah, if you've never been, I mean, I love it here. I'm originally from Oregon. My mom happened to be from here, and when my parents split, I ended up in Canada.
Yeah.
And,
very cool.
Currently, in the current weather of things, I'm very happy that I live here.
That's great. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, sir. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life of Phys Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our show, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content and the stories of our incredible guests. And remember to stay connected with us on all social media platforms. It's at LIFE_OF_PHYS, or on the internet at www.lifeofphys.com. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.